Hello, welcome to another episode of No Pain, No Business. As usual, I'm your host, Chris Lubas. Now, I'm very excited to have today's guest on the podcast with me, and here's why. He's a superstar in the world of LinkedIn. He's the founder of the M Guru Marketing Agency. He runs the Squeeze LinkedIn membership community. He runs two events, LinkedIn Local in Birmingham and Uplift Live, which is coming up soon. He was the cover star and regular columnist at the excellent Freelancer Magazine, which you'll heard me bang on about pretty much every episode. He's a LinkedIn trainer, a social media strategist, a highly experienced marketer, and if there's a marketing event that's worth his salt, you could guarantee that this man will be speaking at it. And to top it all off, he's somehow been kind enough to find the time to speak with me today as well. So may I introduce lover of all things orange, Mr. Gus Bhandal. Gus, how's it going?
That intro was phenomenal. That was quite brilliant. I appreciate it. Thank
Easy,
you.
you've made it
I
easy.
mean, it's an absolute pleasure to be asked, actually. So yeah, I'm loving being here. So thank you.
Brilliant. And we finally get to sort of properly meet in person. Well, meet in kind of inverted commas as it is. But, we've been chatting for a little while and finally got a chance to chat. So it was hopefully a fairly in-depth intro that I've given you. But let's hear it from you in your own words. Why don't you kind of introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself for the listeners as well?
Sure, absolutely. Like you said, I think you've covered everything. But my name is Gus Bhandal. I am a lover of all things orange. My brand started life as like in a variety of colors, and then it turned to black and orange, and I was like, that's the one.
Nice.
And now, yeah, quite frankly, I run lots of events. I run networking events. I run a LinkedIn focused conference. I have a LinkedIn focused membership. I run a marketing agency. I started my business in 2017. And to be honest, I spend a lot of time on social media talking about orange chocolate because, quite frankly, it's subliminal messaging which gets people to send orange chocolate to me at Christmas, which is great. So yeah, it's perfect. That's what I do.
Do you wear orange scented aftershave as well to go with it? We go in the full hog for all the senses.
Yeah, but maybe I should. Yeah, that's
that's it.
Yeah. And I wouldn't pay for proper aftershave. I just probably
of course,
couple of oranges and kind of squeeze them out.
Just carry some satsumas in your pockets.
Yeah, absolutely. Just slowly peel them so it gives off the orange scent.
That's it. I had the pleasure of actually sitting in on or listening to one of Gus's talks very recently, actually. And if you get a chance to see him, if you're at any kind of marketing events and Gus is speaking, you've got to make the time to see him because he is exceptionally good speaker, very, very good presenter, and very funny as well.
Thank you so much. No, I really appreciate that. I was going to say that it just sounded like you were about to say, I've had the pleasure of actually smelling Gus once. And
no.
He does smell of oranges, yes.
Well, maybe we've just been talking actually before we started recording, and I'm going to be going to Creator Day, so we'll actually hopefully be able to meet in person, and then I can maybe we could do a follow-up episode of what Gus smells like.
Absolutely. Let's do that.
Brilliant. So I know you've gotten where you are today through, as most kind of business owners at a certain stage have been, but through quite an interesting route. So could you tell us a little bit how you got to sort of where you are today and you in sort of a relatively niche area, I suppose, with LinkedIn. So how did you kind of get to that position in the first place?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So I was born in the late 70s in the suburb of Coventry and etc. I won't bore you with all that. But fast forward to going to university. Cut a long story short, I failed at most things in life. And when I got to university, I failed at a couple of other things. And then eventually I fell into marketing, which I loved. So I did my marketing degree, and then I lived in London for a couple of years. I ran out of money. Then I moved back to the Midlands. And I've always worked in kind of marketing-related jobs. Then in 2015, I left my long and illustrious marketing career behind to run a local pub for a little while.
And that's
As you do, yeah, absolutely. And that's what I really learned about kind of how to run a business. I kind of went straight into the deep end. I didn't know anything about running a pub whatsoever, but I saw the kind of how lucrative they could possibly be. Spoiler alert, they weren't. But then, I ran a pub for 3 years. It was always going to be temporary. And then I thought, right, I want to get back into the world of marketing. So I started my own marketing agency in 2017. And in terms of the niching, so I started life as a social media manager. Then I became a social media trainer. I kind of covered everything from Facebook to Instagram to Twitter to, Snapchat and Pinterest and lots of other things, etc. Over time, I discovered that all of my clients were coming through LinkedIn. They were all talking about LinkedIn, and that's kind of where I was making, to be honest, about 95% of my income via LinkedIn, whether it's either teaching people how to use LinkedIn or actually getting leads via LinkedIn. So I lent into that, and I spent a long time kind of really deep diving into LinkedIn, and now that's what I kind of deliver for others. Basically, it's the world's biggest kind of business focused platform, and I help other people to make money on that platform.
Yeah, great. Yeah, it's interesting. A couple of things that you've mentioned there. Firstly, how many people that I speak to on the podcast, and business owners in general, who either couldn't quite find their place in school or in the sort of education system as it kind of is, or you've called it failing, just didn't get maybe what was expected of them, or it's very much as we know, the sort of structure of school. We won't go into all the structure of British schooling and things like that. Could be a very dull episode, but a lot of people just find their own way after it by doing things like working their way up in your instance it was a pub, but a lot of people I've spoken to have worked their way up just through certain businesses and then kind of peeled off and done it themselves, working for marketing agencies and various different things. I worked in a lot of pubs when I was younger, and I completely agree. You learn so much just about generally what it's like to work, meeting customers, just so the social aspect of it, and it's hard work. You're on your feet constantly, and if you're running the pub, even more kind of stress, and I certainly wouldn't fancy doing it, and apparently neither did you after.
No, it's not something that it's weird. It was my local pub, so the owner of my local pub said, "Oh, I'm looking for a landlord," and I was like, "Oh, I could do that." And I've been drinking there for years and all that kind of stuff. My brothers used to go there, my dad used to go there, a lot of my friends go there and all that kind of stuff. So I thought, oh, it can't be that hard. I know everybody. It's like Cheers, right? Everybody knows your name.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's great. But the problem is, when you run a business, you can't rely on just your friends. And if I did, I would have been bankrupt in like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
It actually also led me to quit drinking as well, because I decided I'm going to stop drinking, because otherwise I'll be drunk every day, because running your own pub and stuff. And to be honest, I never started again, so I haven't drank for 11 years now,
Wow.
for example. But like you said, I think the thing is, one of the things that I learned when running a pub is A, I won't do it again, and B, so running a pub is either a young man's game or a young person's game or an old person's game. In the kind of the middle of life, kind of thing, when you're looking to buy houses or you have children or all that kind of stuff, etc., it's not really a time to run a pub there, because it's a very busy. I was there 7 days a week, almost 24 hours a day. It was a very long kind of thing, but it taught me how to run a business. It taught me about the intricacies of running a business, and particularly the kind of the legislation and the legal stuff, like getting an accountant and stuff like that, making sure you pay your bills, etc. But also, particularly being a pub landlord, it taught me about speaking, about using my voice. And I think one of the things that probably my favorite thing about running a pub, lots of things I hate about it, but one of my favorite things was the fact that it taught me to talk to people, because you have to fill a lot of silences, or you have to listen to a lot of nonsense where people slowly but gradually get drunk throughout the day, etc. But it's having that ability to converse. And quite frankly, if you don't use your voice, or you're not marketing yourself properly or marketing your business properly, etc., you're not going to get bums on seats. And I think that's the one thing it taught me. So when I kind of started my own marketing agency, I knew that if I don't talk to people, or if I don't post on social media or all that kind of stuff, it's going to be dead before it even started, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I understand that. Like I said, I know a couple of people that have done it, and I know I had to take my hat off, because especially at the moment, I mean, God, the pressure that the hospitality industry is under at the minute is is awful. But so you had your kind of marketing, you had your marketing education before you started the pub, and then kind of gained the practical element from working in the pub. And then, how did you end up going from specifically into LinkedIn? You mentioned earlier on that that it was where you were getting traction. Is that why? Because it was just naturally pulling you in that direction.
Yeah, more or less. I think the thing is, I'm sure we've all seen the LinkedIn post where people share job descriptions, and the job description would say something like, "We're looking for a social media manager with 20 years of experience of MySpace, and they also have to be a videographer. And they have to know SEO, and they have to know Facebook ads and Google ads, and et cetera, et cetera. Know how to build a website. They should know how to make a decent cup of coffee. They should know how to play tennis at a professional level. All these kind of nonsense elements, and then it's like, I will give you 20 grand a year." So one of the reasons I niched into LinkedIn is because I knew that that's what businesses needed. Now, for me to learn everything about every social media platform and keep up with the changes of Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and now TikTok, Pinterest, Reddit, Substack, etc., etc. Although I know them all and I can teach to a pretty good standard on most of those platforms, I niched into LinkedIn because I believe that's not only where I'm making money, but it's where I can teach other people to make money. And being the world's only kind of business-focused platform, I believe every business owner should be there, if that makes sense. So leaning into it was actually the stuff that I've learned and the stuff that I can implement myself, I can implement for others. So all of my LinkedIn training and LinkedIn teaching comes from the fact that I've done it myself, as opposed to just reading some LinkedIn books or watched a couple of YouTube videos and all that kind of stuff. So, and I'm always learning. I'm on the platform like all day, every day, and I'm always learning myself, and therefore I can implement that for others.
Yeah, because it is difficult as business owners and for the people listening, I'm sure, to try and spread yourself across social media platforms, because firstly there are so many, but also you're trying to get in front of as many people as possible. And once you start putting out things like video content and a lot of people listening will have newsletters or other podcasts and things like that, and you're trying to just pull in as many people as you can from various different spaces, I suppose, to get in front of as many people as possible. How can people manage to do that, do you think? What's the best? Is it best to just focus in one thing, or is it better to try and pop up in a few different places?
It's very subjective, right? So, for example, a TikTok trainer will tell you need to be on TikTok. A LinkedIn trainer like me will tell you need to be on LinkedIn. And it's just, and you speak to an email marketer, and they're like, you should have email marketing. You speak to a podcaster, you must have a podcast. There are so many things, and these are all tactics that we're talking about. So, my career and my education is very much based around marketing strategy. So what I do is, so I can go into a business and kind of essentially oversee their marketing strategy and see kind of what works best. And to be honest, if LinkedIn doesn't work, I'll say LinkedIn's not the place for you. What we're talking about is the tactics of how we deliver them to the end user. And ultimately, It's about making sure where our end user is and the kind of content that they want to consume. The end user for my business and my marketing agency is on LinkedIn, and what they find is the content that I create on LinkedIn, and that's kind of what they want to see. But like I said, there's particularly we've got podcasts, we've got email marketing, we've got video marketing, we've got YouTube, etc. Then obviously we've got all the social media channels, so on and so forth, and that's just one aspect. Then we can obviously talk about kind of out of home advertising or newspaper advertising or print or radio and all the rest of it, etc., like we used to talk many years ago in marketing circles. Particularly for any business that's looking to start marketing or indeed kind of streamline their marketing, essentially you have to think about where do your customers hang out and what kind of content do they want to consume. So my ideal customers hang out on LinkedIn and they want to consume long form text-based content, because that's what I found kind of through various testing, etc. I also do speaking gigs, so I have a YouTube channel, but I don't share that YouTube channel because I couldn't care less if anybody watches it or not. What I want you to do is come to the events where I'm speaking. So I want you to buy a ticket for the event and all that kind of stuff. But actually, I have the YouTube channel because I send it to event organizers so that I can get more speaking gigs, etc. So it's knowing who your ideal clients are and who your ideal audience are, and then creating content that's focused on that audience. So it's not always easy. There's a lot of kind of, particularly for small business owners, I think there's a lot of trial and error in what you're going to kind of put out there. And then once we start talking about new social media channels like Threads or Blue Sky or, all these other kind of things, people will tell you that you always need to be on every channel, and that's not how it works. I normally suggest pick 2 or 3 channels and just go all in on those channels and tell people, this is where I do my best work, this is where I hang out, please come and find me.
Yeah, great advice, and you're right, and especially now that all of the these forms of media that we can produce are so much more accessible. Somebody could, for example, set up a podcast in his living room and start interviewing people from there if he so wanted to, and so
again, it's very much focused. Like, starting a podcast is a great idea, writing a book is a great idea, doing email marketing is a great idea. It's and through testing, you'll see if that's what your audience wants and needs.
Yeah.
I talk a lot, like as a slight kind of tangent here, I talk a lot about force fields, and I always recommend that you should have like me personally, in my business, I have a 3-pronged approach. So my force fields are essentially my LinkedIn profile, my Facebook group, which is for like offering social media support to small businesses, and my email marketing. So you either subscribe to my emails, or you join my Facebook group, or you connect with me on LinkedIn. And if you do all 3, you fall into my force field. So my triangular force field, as it were. And once you're inside, you can't get away from it. Because once you do all 3, you can't get away from it. So, and I can tell you, hey, you should also kind of follow me on Instagram or watch my YouTube videos and all that kind of stuff. That's like a secondary force field. But the initial force field, and I believe every business should have a 3-pronged approach of, here are the 3 things that I'm going to market to get an audience in. So whether it's a LinkedIn profile, whether it's Instagram, whether it's writing blogs, whether it's a YouTube channel, whether it's a podcast, whether it's writing a book, etc. I always recommend you should have 3 channels, 3 places where people can find you. And if they find you in all 3 places, that means it's a very hot audience, and essentially they're ideal clients that can't escape you until they either buy, die, or tell you to go away, I believe.
Nice. Well, I think you're particularly good at being able to, we've already listed all the various different things that you do. Within those different things, you've got things like that force field that you've just spoken about. You've got things, themes and things that run through all of your presentations. I don't think did we fully explain the orange thing at the beginning? I talked about Gus smelling like oranges, but just to clarify, his brand is orange. I'm not sure if I mentioned that, but it kind of has led me to think, how long has it taken you to get to that point where everything is so kind of well connected? Because that's something which I've noticed in it, and I would urge anybody who's listening to check out Gus's branding and his his social media, even if it's just for the research purposes of seeing how well it all kind of connects and interlinks. So for people, again, that are either smaller business just starting out or struggling to sort of knit those things together, how long has it taken you to kind of get all that so well organised?
I mean, that's a great question, and I got to be honest, I'm still working on it. I've been in business for 8 years, so to try and give you a very long story that's boring in a very brief, hopefully interesting way. So when I started my business, I like 2 of my favorite colors were silver and purple, and I thought I want my brand to be silver and purple. And when I saw my brand as silver and purple, it looked absolutely awful. I knew what I wanted. I knew that I wanted an icon and I wanted my name. So the M Guru, so you've got the hashtag in a speech bubble, which is the icon, and then you've got the name, which is the M Guru, and the M stands for marketing. So the idea is that the 2 work either together or in silos. So all of the world's best brands have an icon. So Amazon has the smile, Coca-Cola has the kind of the white stripe on the red can, Aston Martin has the wings, et cetera, all that kind of stuff. So I said so that was the kind of the start of the logo, and then the branding, because I was the guy that I was talking to, he was a kind of a branding, like a color specialist. He said, let's try various colors. The reason we went with orange was because many years ago I used to teach marketing I used to teach people about marketing segmentation, and I used to use a Terry's chocolate orange to demonstrate it. So I used to put it in the middle of a room and say, "What does a Terry's chocolate orange teach us about marketing?" And actually, it's audience segmentation, so each element and all that kind of
Nice.
stuff.
Love
So
that.
that's where it started. And when I told him this story, he said, "Oh well, let's try orange." And then we tried a number of different backgrounds and stuff, etc. And I said, "No, let's have it on black." So the idea of the black is that it signifies luxury and signifies kind of high end marketing, etc. And the orange signifies warmth and friendliness, etc. So the two kind of work well together. Now,
Yeah.
so that's the story of the brand, but like in terms of the colors and the brand and the logo, etc. But then going forward, it's about how to incorporate that into my world. So I wear an orange bandana, or I might wear an orange T-shirt, or I almost always wear orange trainers to events and networking, etc. And it's all these like subtle little touches. When I get a new client, I send them orange chocolate in the post, for example. So it's all these little things that kind of, they're just like subliminal messaging that brings people back to that thing. And I get tagged in posts left, right, and center when people find like an orange chocolate or something, or they see an orange bike, an orange car, and they'll tag me and say, "Oh, Gus, is this yours?" Knowing full well that it's not mine, but it's just that element of reinforcement because it's come to their mind, but also it's the kind of how it kind of emanates out from there to their networks and all that kind of stuff. And I believe in any business there should be an underlying element of brand colors, reinforcing the brand, etc. So one of my former clients is like a business coach, and his business has the word red in it, and so therefore, no matter where he goes, he wears a red pocket square in his suit jacket.
Right.
So everybody now knows him as the guy with the red pocket square, whether they know his name or not. That's what they see because it's just that reinforcement. Everything he can wear anything else, but it's that red pocket square that signifies him in a crowd and all that kind of stuff. And like I said, in a busy world, there's 1.3 billion people on LinkedIn. But if you're scrolling LinkedIn and you see something orange, if you're connected to me, more often than not, it's going to be me or a post by me or something like that. And I think it's just it's that reinforcement for your audience, and that's something obviously that we all should be like vying for in our business.
Yeah, I think it's a really underrated approach. I think because people assume that because their business is maybe smaller that they don't need to worry about the minutiae, I guess, of those kind of things, of those little signatures that you just pointed out. Even something like I might argue that orange trainers would not necessarily be a subtle message, but definitely memorable. But it is a great point, and instantly, when it comes to tying your brand together or your various bits and pieces, just something like a color or having the correct logo or icon or whatever it is threading through it is so important. And it's something which I know personally I'm rubbish at. It's something I need to work on, and something that I'm sure a lot of the other listeners will be thinking the same thing, that it's something which is relatively simple but has to be done consistently.
It has to be something that makes you feel comfortable. So if it's uncomfortable, then it's not appropriate. So, for example, like I said, yes, I do wear orange trainers, but if I'm wearing a suit, I don't wear orange trainers. I'll wear black shoes, but I'll have orange socks. But I also have an orange watch strap, and I have an orange belt, and things like that. And Simon Sinek, one of the world's best marketers, he did a talk a little while ago where he said that he always wears something orange because it grounds him. And he said it's not about branding and all that kind of stuff. It's actually, he knows that he's going to be able to deliver a great talk and be able to support people how he can support people if he's wearing orange. It feels better if he's wearing something orange, even if it's as simple as a watch strap. So I think it's that comfortable nature of, and it could be your phone screensaver. It could be a handkerchief in your top pocket. It could be the socks that you wear, the handbag that you hold, etc., and all that kind of stuff. If there's something that just reinforces that brand and makes you feel comfortable, it's something that the people around you in your network, etc., will start kind of exploring and seeing and seeing more often. Basically, I think it's like I said, it's that subliminal messaging of just making people think about you as opposed to thinking about somebody else.
Yeah, it's a really important point actually, because obviously it's no good just grabbing a pair of I don't know, pink underpants and wearing that over the top of your probably make you stand out.
Indeed, yeah.
But probably for all the wrong reasons, I imagine.
Absolutely.
It might get kicked out of a few events possibly, but
Indeed.
yeah, the whole thing of making sure that it's something that is comfortable, but also that actually represents what you're doing as well. You're not just chucking in a random thing. It's a really cool story actually that of that coming from the chocolate orange. I didn't know about that. It's a nice thread, I suppose, to be able to lead back to. I ask all my we're getting to the kind of nitty gritty now of the interview. So this question I ask to pretty much every person who's on the podcast, because obviously it's called No Pain, No Business. So let's kind of dig into the pain element of running a business a bit more. What has there been a particularly difficult point when you've been running your businesses at kind of any stage really, or a specific sort of I want to say low point? It sounds really sad, but you know what I mean. A point that's been particularly hard, where you've just thought, I don't know if I can still carry on doing this.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely been smooth sailing and it's brilliant. And if anybody's thinking about starting a business, do it. It's really easy. It's probably
yeah, there we go. And that's it.
Yeah,
that's it for today.
That's the soundbite. No, I think there are. I think almost every day there is something that is sent to try me, and every day, every day, every couple of days, or maybe at least once a week, I kind of think, why am I doing this? Like, forget this. Let's just go get like a proper job, etc. And I think there's always going to be times to test you. So, and particularly when you're a freelancer, when you're a solopreneur, when you're a small business owner, etc. It's a different one because you're always in the business. It's always yours. So when you work 9 till 5, you get a salary, you go home and kind of, you watch Love Island and go to sleep. Sorry, not Love Island.
Yeah. Nothing wrong with Love Island, Gus.
Yeah. No, allegedly.
Well, actually, there's a lot wrong with Love Island, but let's not go down that.
Different podcast. But yeah, I think the thing is, when you run a business, you're thinking about it 24/7, and I think that's hard in itself. But actually, because it's most businesses, they become our baby, right? So it's kind of like, actually, I will think about this all the time, and I will try my best to improve it and help my clients and support people and all that kind of stuff. But along the way, there are low points of either clients leaving you, clients not paying, not getting clients in the first place, somebody taking umbrage with something you said on social media, somebody not liking orange trainers. It could be a whole plethora of things, and you just never know where that negativity is going to come from. And I think that's one of the hardest things in business, is actually trying your best to be a good person while also actually, it's the dichotomy of actually, well, you have to make money and you have to kind of find clients and you have to sell your services, etc. And that doesn't come natural to most people. And therefore they find it hard to sell, and therefore they find it hard to get clients. And then when they've got no clients, they've got no money, and then they can't pay bills, and then it becomes a never-ending spiral. So, there's a lot of stuff that is sent to test us. For me, probably most recently is when something happens in your personal life, whether it's a bereavement or something similar, that then kind of, what it does is it brings to the fore that actually you're the only person in your business, and you're the only person that can deal with stuff and manage stuff, etc. And you speak to 90% of business coaches, and they will say, you have to create a business that can run without you. And I understand that concept, but actually, how do we do that? It's kind of, and when you speak to them, like, oh, you either hire people, or you set up automations, or you set up processes, or you work 3 months in advance, etc. And I guarantee, if you speak to 100 business owners, 98 of them will tell you that they don't do that, basically.
Yeah.
You'll get the odd couple. It's a minority that say, yeah, my business can run without me, etc. But then, why would you want to do that? I like being in my business, and I like treating it like a job, and I like being in it all day, every day. But when something happens, when something hits the fan, all of a sudden, it's very obvious that actually everything is yours, and there's nothing that, quite frankly, nothing you can do about it. So that's kind of where the difficulty kind of comes in. So unfortunately, you'll always have low points, and being in a business is about making sure that there are more high points than low. And if
Yeah.
there aren't, go get a job. Honestly,
Yeah.
that's clear, ultimately.
Yeah. I mean, with that, has that ever pushed you to the point of actually thinking of actually considering giving up with it and doing exactly that? Or have you always had, do you think you've always managed to get that balance? From the outside in, it looks like you've got a very good balance of genuinely enjoying what you do. That's certainly a vibe that I've got from the small amount of time that we've kind of known each other. Is that
Yeah,
a
I mean,
fair assessment, do you think?
it is, yeah, absolutely. I love what I do. I love networking. I love meeting people. I love making new friends. I love teaching people about LinkedIn. I love learning about LinkedIn. And it sounds really trite. I mean, obviously I love lots of money and I love hanging around on the beach. But in my business, I love what I do. But like from a very personal perspective, so it may look like a success and it may look like everything, and I'm loving things and etc. I don't love everything like 100% of the time, but
No, of course.
I have a young son, so for me, like when I started my business, it coincided with my son being born. So therefore,
Right.
my wife has a proper job, which means I get all the flexibility of doing all the school runs and taking him to all of his activities like football and swimming and taekwondo
Yeah.
and all the other nonsense that he does.
Everything else.
And everything else never ending. But I love it. So the thing is,
Yeah.
I'm not rich. I'm not a millionaire. I don't live in a big house and all that kind of stuff. But I get all of the time I can with my son, with my child, and that's kind of the thing that I really love. And that's so sometimes you have to think about, why are we doing this? What is what's the purpose of flexibility, or what's the purpose of running our business, or
Yeah.
etc. etc. You know, part of it is I couldn't get a job. Nobody else would employ me once they found out I was a pub landlord, despite the 25 years of marketing experience and the loads of
Wow.
letters after my
Really?
name. Yeah, it was really weird. Like most people just said, well, the last thing on your CV is a pub landlord. So, and I'm like, yeah, but I've also got loads
Done
of
other
letters
things.
after my name. Yeah, I've got three. I've got two postgraduate marketing qualifications. I'm one of the best marketers you'll ever meet. etc. And they're like, yeah, but you're a pub landlord. So I was like, right, fine. I'll start my own business, and that's what I did, and it gave me that
God.
flexibility and stuff. So I love it,
Yeah.
and I love what I do. Um, and I think, particularly for business owners, don't ever forget your why, whatever that why is, whether it's children, family, wanting lots of money, just wanting not to work for somebody else, etc., etc. There's lots of reasons. As long as you don't deviate from the why, you're gonna love your job more often than not, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. Great advice. I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of people listening, and myself included, who've got children and who are trying to get those balances right, and who have maybe moved into either running their own business or freelance or whatever situation they're in order to get that kind of balance and freedom. And then you're trying to sort of not feel guilty about spending time with the kids, and you're not spending time on the business, and vice versa. Damned if you do it, damned if you don't. But you're right, you can't forget that ultimate thing of, well, if you did it to spend more time with your children and or whatever it is that you happen to do, make sure you're still doing that and don't let it
Yeah,
start encroach into becoming something that you didn't ever want it to be.
absolutely. And I should add to that so between the hours of 3 and 7, every like Monday to Friday, I don't open my emails, I don't look at my work, I don't open LinkedIn and all that kind of stuff, because that's the time with my kid. So he has an activity almost every day, but it's also the time when I cook for him or bathe him or all that kind of stuff. So that's my time, and so my clients know that. I write it into all my contracts, like, don't call me after 3 o'clock, because it's not gonna happen, basically. And I say 3 till 7 because after 7, once he goes to bed, and I'm sit down and start watching Love Island. Oh, sorry, Match of the Day. When we sit down, and then I can open my emails, or kind of etc. I don't have to. If I do, I do.
Yeah.
If I don't, I don't. But my clients know. So it's setting those boundaries as well, kind of in your personal life. And I think more often than not, most business owners start disliking their business because it encroaches on every part of their life. It takes over their life, and it did for me for a long time. The pub, when I ran the pub, it completely took over my life. I didn't see my wife for 3 years, basically, more or less. And then when I now started my own business, particularly the first couple of years, trying to get it over the line and trying to actually start making some money and all that kind of stuff. Again, I went to all the networking days, evenings, breakfasts, lunches, dinners, all that kind of stuff, etc., working at weekends, so on and so forth. There was a time when it took over my life, basically, and then I worked out that something had to change. So I think that's probably my other advice to set clear time boundaries to make sure you know when you're doing things.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mentioned earlier on that I'd been able to attend one of your talks recently, and one of the things that I noticed, not just about that talk, but throughout a lot of the things that you do, is that music seems to play quite a big part in your business and your personality, I guess, as well. Is that something intentional that you've done to try and also maybe help to make sure you enjoy what you're doing to kind of keep that going, or is it just something that you use as a kind of tool to maybe relate to other business owners?
The phrase often, as we know, music is a great leveler. So whatever kind of music you're into, whether it's George Michael or Robbie Williams or Justin Bieber or Megadeth or Iron Maiden or whoever it may be, right? Music is a great leveler because it makes us think about things. Now, particularly, I run the theme of content albums and kind of relating to musical superstars in terms of they create legacies and they create lots of content, etc., for the good of their audience. And obviously, it's something that they want to do and all that kind of stuff. It's something that they're good at. But you think about whether it's Queen or Wham or Iron Maiden or like I said, it doesn't matter who it is. The point is that they're creating content for their audiences. For me, it's a very simple way to, like, most people I speak to understand music. They will listen to music. They will listen to somebody kind of thing. It's very rare you'll meet somebody that says, I never listen to music at all. It's very rare you'll meet. And to be honest, when those people do, that conversation ends very quickly.
Yeah.
Like, okay, you're weird.
See ya. Yeah.
So, but generally, and it becomes a talking point about who you're into, what you're into, etc. But also what we can learn from those people that can then, that we can take into our business, for example. And more often than not, it's the fact that they're good at something, the fact that they're sharing that gift with the world, and the fact that they're ever evolving to make sure that their audience are always interested. So, and when I talk about music, I kind of liken it to the fact that actually we all want to be superstars, and we become superstars by creating an audience, creating a network, creating a community, and then creating content that they want to see and hear and read and all that kind of stuff. And if we evolve with our audiences, then ultimately our business will be a success forever.
Yeah, what a great answer. And it is also, I suppose that's another thing with music, is that it's ultimately storytelling, isn't it? And that kind of also leans into all of those areas as well. I used to be in a band. I don't like to talk about it too much. For the listeners, probably sick of hearing about it now, but it's funny how when you start talking about that, instantly you can kind of again start sparking conversations with people. Like you said, if you're ever in a bit of an awkward situation or networking, all that sort of stuff that people hate, the fact that making music a leveler, that's a great great phrase actually. I might have to steal that.
Yeah. Oh, you're more than welcome. You were a drummer, right? Is that right? Or did I get that?
Bassist. I was a bassist and a songwriter as well. Yeah. Got to throw that in because bassists get very much overlooked, so they have to start searching for other ways of gaining attention.
It depends on who the bassist is. So whenever somebody,
if you're good,
whenever I hear somebody talk about the bass, I always think of Nicky Six from Motley Crue.
Oh, okay.
And those guys. Actually, was he the bassist? I don't know. If he wasn't, we'll edit this bit out. But I always think about the old rock bands where you have the bassist, where and it's the bassist that becomes the famous one because actually he's the one that's most unhinged. If you look at bands like Poison, Motley Crue, Aerosmith, etc., because they're the quiet ones, they become the most unhinged, which makes them the most famous. It doesn't happen nowadays, but it used to. So Yeah,
in
and
the good old
you know,
days.
having met you, Chris, I can imagine that you had some hedonistic days behind you. You know,
I couldn't possibly say. I was far too young. It's a distant memory now, I guess.
of course, I believe you.
There's no evidence of it in the internet anymore, so don't look for it. It was funny.
We'll
You
find out.
mentioned MySpace. You mentioned MySpace earlier on. That did make me laugh. That's where we started off. I am of the MySpace generation, so
Those were the
yeah,
days.
that was quite a funny little mention of it earlier on.
Absolutely.
We mentioned the kind of low point of your, what the sort of low things and hard times working in business. But what about the kind of opposite end of the scale? And have you got a sort of memorable, whether it's a memorable moment or a point where things kind of something you did kind of help to turn things around, or has it just been kind of multiple little things that you pick up on? What's been a kind of real memorable thing that you've done or that you've completed as part of your kind of years in business?
It's definitely the steps, the stepping stones of, kind of like moving up the ladder or climbing the stairs and all that kind of stuff. So everything that I've done
Yeah.
in my life. So starting a business is one thing, becoming like being part of a local member, like networking membership was another, etc. And like, making friends along the way, then getting clients and then bigger clients. I've worked with like some massive global companies, etc. Some of whom have made me sign NDAs because they said, actually, we don't want to put your name on any of our stuff, which is obviously a shame.
Yeah.
I mean, a shame for me because I can't talk about them. But
Exactly.
but like, I work from everyone from like local like one-man bands to international conglomerates working in like massive industries and all that kind of stuff. Hundreds of thousands of employees and stuff like that, and helping them with their LinkedIn kind of along the way,
Yeah.
which is great. And again, it's all these kind of stepping stones of being found, etc. So, for example, so John Esperian, our mutual friend, kind of a LinkedIn trainer as well. He used to do this thing called the Friday Shout. So every
Right.
Friday, I used to talk about somebody, and I remember I was number 160 of the Friday Shouts. And when he gave me that Friday Shout, it kind of elevated my business. I was like, oh my
Oh,
God,
wow.
I'm really proud of this and the fact, etc. And
Yeah.
now, fast forward, like 5 or 6 years, we run a conference together. So we run a LinkedIn conference together,
Yeah.
for example. I was on a podcast with Teresa Heath Waring. I was on a podcast with the Two Lauras. I am now running a workshop at Atomicon, for example.
Yeah.
I spoke at a social media conference in Cymru, which is probably like one of the biggest audiences I've ever spoken to, etc., etc. And I could do this all day, every day. I could tell you lots of things along the way. I've also met Mel Barfield, so that was quite.
Oh,
That was
she
quite a
will be
stepping
making an
stone in my
appearance soon enough.
yeah, absolutely. I once also got a hug from Dave Harland, who works with Mel.
Wow.
So yeah, and all these things, these are, and although yes, I'm being slightly jovial. Actually, the important thing is that I'm never too important or too arrogant to think that I deserve any of this stuff. I'm humble enough to know that actually I'm very honored and proud to have all these little things in my life, and actually, it's the stepping stones to the next step and the next stage,
Yeah.
and, what's happening next and all that kind of stuff. And I think, particularly for business owners, my advice would be to remember those little milestones and those little things. Your first 4-figure client, or your first 3-figure client, or the fact that you can afford a new car, or the fact that you get to take your kid to the park, or etc., or whatever it may be. Being on a decent podcast, or getting a small speaking gig, which then turns into a big speaking gig and a bigger speaking gig, and all that kind of stuff. So I wouldn't, looking back at the 8 years I've been in business, I don't think there's any one singular point where I say that was the catalyst to me being where I am today. But it's all the little stepping stones, and you have to keep pushing forward. I think that's the thing. You have to keep pushing forward to keep making those steps, kind of thing. And as soon as you stop making those steps, you might as well stop, basically.
Yeah. Yes. And I kind of asked that question for that kind of that answer, because it's very rare, I think, that many people will have a specific point where they're just like, oh, everything's clicked now and it all runs fine and smooth, and now I can go off and run maybe those 2 out of 100 people that you mentioned might have that story. I'll dig them out. But in reality, it is just taking the time to kind of enjoy those little those small things that you mentioned, like you said, okay, it was sort of part joking, but actually probably wasn't really, because you have met people along the way, and you end up going down these funny little routes that you would never have, even actively sought out. They just kind of happen by meeting the right people and getting those nice little moments, like you said. And I think a lot of the time people work towards that sort of, I want to make £1 million, or I want to do whatever it is. A lot of sports people talk about it quite a lot when they say, oh, I won something, and then all of a sudden it meant nothing because I've won it. And then I was like, right, okay, well, now what? You get that feeling of, well, you haven't taken the time to actually enjoy the process.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, my one of my biggest pieces of advice around that would be to put yourself in the room. A lot of my opportunities have come because I'm with people, whether it's connecting to people on LinkedIn, whether it's, making cheeky asks of people, whether it's kind of going to networking events. Yeah, no, but it's a good thing. Yeah. No, I mean, I didn't mean you specifically, but
no, I did.
But it is that it's actually, if you don't ask, you don't get. But
yeah, exactly.
You're definitely not going to get if people don't know who you are, kind of thing.
Yeah.
If I just I can't call Simon Sinek tomorrow and say, hey, I'm going to start a podcast. Do you want to be the first guest? I wouldn't even get that far, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But if I was in a room with him and I went to a conference where he was speaking, etc., and I got to pay extra to have a VIP seat or maybe get to shake his hand and all that kind of stuff, I'm that little bit closer. Not that I recommend things like that, but my point is that if you're in the room, that's where the magic happens. A lot of my best speaking gigs have been because I went the year before and I got to know the organizers and I got to know other speakers and I got to meet people in the room, because sometimes there's just somebody in the room, and if you're supporting others, they'll support you back.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that, and I'm a massive advocate of networking, talking to people, and just putting yourself in those positions. We're careering towards the end of this chat. I could speak to Gus pretty much all day. I think there's so much information that he's got, experience, and just interesting stories and things. But unfortunately, all things come to an end. So a couple more questions. But
sure.
What's the sort of, is there like a particular I want to say kind of a myth, I suppose, the biggest myth that people think about running a business?
I think lots of people make it look easy, and don't get me wrong, I don't think anybody believes that it's easy, but I think the biggest myth is that everything we see is everything we get. And particularly on social media. Social media is the highlight reel. It's the look at me. And I get people all the time saying, oh, you're so successful and you're doing really well and stuff like that. I'm like, well, come and see my bank account, and or come and see the locks that my wife just changed, and that kind of stuff. That's a joke, by the way, in case my wife's listening. She hasn't yet changed the locks. But there's lots of stuff that happens behind closed doors that you would never know about, and people don't publicize. So and actually, I do need to very clearly say my wife has not changed the locks. I just need to now thinking about it. But there is that element of, well, it's just and even when people share their vulnerable moments, they're not really vulnerable. They're just kind of like when you go to a job interview and somebody asks, what's your biggest weakness? And you always end up saying, well, my biggest weakness is I'm too perfect. I'm a perfectionist. And it's complete nonsense, right?
You've been stealing my answers.
Yeah, yeah. I knew that's where I saw you before.
Damn.
Yeah, but it's those kind of things. What people are putting on social media, I think the biggest myth is that actually, everybody's posting everything on social media, and that's how life is.
Yeah.
The 7-figure business owners were once 6-figure, 5-figure, 4-figure, 3-figure business owners. Do you know what I mean? And like the people that wear orange trainers once couldn't afford orange trainers, or the people that there are some people that run a business not to make money, but actually just to have that flexibility. Because they've got flexibility, they haven't got any money, so it looks like might look like they're doing well, but they're not. So there's I think the biggest myth is just be careful about social media. So that's kind of the myth, as it were, that we need to dispel. But on the flip side, find friends around us. I think the good thing is that actually running a business means that we can find good people around us where we can be honest with one another and actually be friends and openly talk. And whether you are on podcasts, or whether you have a virtual coffee, or whether you meet somebody at networking, etc. It's about having that network around you where you can be honest and real with one another, because and again, it's about being in the room, right? It's finding those people in the room that can support you and talk to you and talk you up, or indeed talk you down. So that's kind of what we're looking for.
Yeah, yeah. That kind of leads into my last question. I'm conscious of the time, so although that would have been a lovely place to have ended, I'm going to ruin it by bringing another question in, which is just on a similar note, really, of just what your kind of, if you had to give one kind of practical insight to somebody who's just started in the early stage of their business, and they're just starting to, not even a business, just building something. What would you kind of give? Do you think what would be a kind of practical insight for them?
Well, I would say be in the room, because I've already given that advice. Let's park that. But the advice is,
well, maybe if I've got I'll get my really good sound engineer to merge these questions.
Yeah, indeed. But yeah, I think the answer is, I mean, finding yourself in the room, whether it's virtual, whether it's connecting to the right people, whether it's just sending somebody a message, or indeed going networking, going to conferences, going, local networking, national events, whatever it may be. So that's kind of one thing. But actually, to answer your question, I think the one big thing that people can do is not be afraid of posting or creating content or telling stories or etc. Storytelling, and particularly the real world storytelling, the counteract to AI and automation and all that kind of stuff is all about being human. So I think the one thing is start telling your story, whether it be via LinkedIn, or whether it be via social media or email marketing, or doing a podcast, or writing blogs, or whatever it may be. Start telling that story, because actually all of our lives individually as business owners says so much more than the business that we do. You type in LinkedIn trainer into Google, there's a million of us, right? Kind of thing. So you never, it doesn't matter who you find. But if you kind of type in LinkedIn trainer who wears orange, or weirdly, if you type into Google the UK's #1 LinkedIn trainer, the top result is me. And that's not because I am. No, of course it's not true. But nobody needs to know that. But because I put it on my website, I hit the search results, right? So it's one of those things that actually it's about being kind of as open and as honest as possible, but creating content. So start telling your story online, which then drives traffic to you and gets people to know you as a person, as opposed to just a business owner, because that's where the real magic happens.
Oh, brilliant. There we go. See, there's your ending. That's how good he is. He does two superb endings, so I can pick and choose now which one's the best.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Or neither, indeed. You might think, actually, they're both.
Well, yeah, I might have to just edit the whole thing out, yeah. No, absolutely no chance, yeah.
Here's a tip, only yellow snow, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, listen, it's been absolutely, genuinely a pleasure to speak with you, Gus, and I really do. I've mentioned a couple of times, but I really, really do appreciate you taking the time out to speak with me and to share all of that, all of your stories and insights with all the people that are listening. I would be stunned if there's anybody that hasn't that's listened to that and hasn't got some sort of piece of really, really good kind of actionable advice. So for those of you that are listening, or for those that are listening, I should say, where can everybody sort of find you? Where can everyone get in touch with you and find out a little bit more about you, mate?
So it may surprise you to know that I do my best work on LinkedIn. So
what?
I know, right?
You really should mention that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if you look for Gus Bhandal on LinkedIn, or indeed my suffix. So my suffix everywhere is mguru UK. So if you type into Google mguru UK, the first 10 pages are all about me, basically. But yeah, I do my best work on LinkedIn. So come on, don't follow me on LinkedIn. Come and connect. Please connect with me on LinkedIn, and let's make friends.
Brilliant, fantastic, and I urge you all to do so. We should be inundated with. I think it's hundreds of millions of listeners that should be inundating you soon, Gus. So,
absolutely, very soon.
Apologies for ruining your LinkedIn feed with all the connection requests.
Hey, I'm looking forward to them. Yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant. All right, we're going to wrap it up there. Thanks again, Gus, and we'll catch up again soon. And thanks everyone for listening as always. Bye bye now.
Thank you.